she saw to it I didn't get the Oscar for Baby Jane. She went to all the New York nominees and said, if you can't get out there, I'll accept your award. And please do not vote for her. Joan stood with Miss Bancroft's Oscar clutched to her bosom. It had become hers. Yes, it had become hers. She also traveled with it for 1 year.
2 years before her death, Bette Davis made a confession that shocked Hollywood. At 79, she finally named the one person she hated most.
She was so jealous. She was a fool, my dear. We had a great percentage. If I had won that Oscar, we'd have made $1 million more on the film.
It wasn't just professional rivalry. It was something darker that had poisoned Hollywood for decades and destroyed both women in ways the public never knew.
I was furious because that would have made me the first person with 3.
The hatred began with a stolen love and ended with the cruelest eulogy ever delivered. This is the untold story of Hollywood's most legendary feud and the secret that started it all. Hollywood in 1933 was still finding its footing after the transition to talkies, and 2 rising actresses were about to collide in a way that would define both their careers and their hatred for each other. Joan Crawford, already an established star since 1925, was MGM royalty. Bette Davis, 5 years younger and infinitely hungrier, was still clawing her way up the Warner Brothers ladder. The spark that ignited their decades-long war seemed innocuous enough. Davis had just reached a career milestone. Her new film, Ex-Lady, would be the first to feature her name above the title. Warner Brothers had planned a massive publicity campaign to celebrate what they hoped would be her transformation into a major star. The studio had invested everything in this moment, believing it would launch Davis into the Hollywood stratosphere alongside established names like Crawford. But on the exact same day that Davis's publicity campaign launched, Joan Crawford made an announcement that would overshadow everything. She was divorcing Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Hollywood's golden prince. The timing wasn't coincidental. It was calculated warfare. Crawford knew exactly what she was doing when she chose that moment to detonate her personal bombshell.
I'll tell you something very interesting. There were never 2 more opposed actresses working together in the world. Just totally different people and systems.
The aftermath was devastating for Davis. The New York Times ran multiple pages about Crawford's divorce, while Davis was buried in a small paragraph in the entertainment section. Ex-Lady underperformed at the box office, starving of the publicity oxygen it needed to succeed. Davis blamed Crawford entirely, convinced that the divorce announcement was a deliberate act of sabotage designed to steal her thunder. What made the slight even more painful was the fundamental difference between how the 2 women approached their craft. Davis saw herself as a serious actress, trained in theater, committed to the art of performance. Crawford, in Davis's view, was nothing more than a glamour queen who had slept her way to stardom. Davis would repeatedly draw this distinction throughout her career, the comparison carrying all the venom she could muster. Crawford represented everything Davis despised about Hollywood: the triumph of image over substance, sexuality over skill, politics over talent. Davis had arrived in Hollywood with classical training and theatrical credentials, expecting the film industry to reward merit. Instead, she watched as Crawford, whom she saw as a manufactured star with limited acting ability, commanded bigger paychecks and better roles simply because she photographed beautifully and knew how to work the system. The resentment went deeper than professional jealousy. Davis came from a respectable New England family and had been raised with Puritan values about hard work and moral conduct. Crawford's background, growing up in poverty, using her sexuality as a tool for advancement, collecting powerful lovers like trophies, offended Davis's sense of propriety. She looked down on Crawford not just as an inferior actress, but as a morally questionable person who represented the worst impulses of Hollywood excess. From 1933 forward, every interaction between the 2 women would be filtered through this fundamental animosity. Davis would spend the rest of her career trying to prove that talent mattered more than glamour, while Crawford would continue to demonstrate that understanding the business of show business was just as important as understanding the craft itself. Neither woman would ever admit that they might have learned something from the other. The ex-lady incident established a pattern that would repeat for decades. Crawford would make strategic moves that undermined Davis's career moments, always with perfect timing and plausible deniability. Davis, meanwhile, would respond with increasingly bitter public statements that revealed her deep-seated belief that Hollywood had rewarded the wrong woman. The war had begun, and it would only get bloodier from here. 2 years later, if the ex-lady incident had planted the seeds of hatred between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, what happened during the filming of Dangerous would water those seeds with the blood of betrayal. This wasn't just about professional rivalry anymore. This was about the heart. Davis had fallen desperately in love with her co-star, Franchot Tone, a sophisticated New York aristocrat who represented everything she found attractive in a man. Tone was educated at Cornell University, came from old money, and possessed the kind of refined elegance that Davis, with her New England upbringing, found irresistible. Years later, Davis would confess her complete infatuation with Tone, describing how everything about him reflected an elegance she found impossible to resist. But there was a problem. Joan Crawford had her sights set on the same man, and she wasn't about to let Bette Davis have him without a fight. What followed was a masterclass in romantic warfare that would make Crawford's ex-lady sabotage look like child's play. Crawford's strategy was surgical in its precision. While Davis was filming Dangerous with Tone during the day, Crawford would arrange to meet him for lunch. Every afternoon, Tone would return to the set with lipstick stains on his collar, his attention completely focused on the glamorous MGM star who was showering him with attention. Davis watched helplessly as the man she loved became increasingly infatuated with her greatest rival. The psychological warfare was devastating. Davis, despite being married to Harmon Oscar Nelson at the time, was completely vulnerable to Tone's charm. She had never experienced this kind of sophisticated romantic attention from a man of Tone's caliber. But Crawford was playing a completely different game. She understood that in Hollywood, romance was just another tool for gaining power and humiliating enemies. Crawford's seduction of Tone wasn't just about winning a man. It was about destroying Davis's confidence and proving her superiority in every arena that mattered. While Davis was focused on delivering her best performance in Dangerous, Crawford was orchestrating a parallel drama that would upstage anything happening on screen. The engagement announcement came like a knife to the heart. Crawford and Tone declared their intention to marry while Davis was still filming Dangerous, still believing she had a chance with the man she loved. The timing was perfect, just cruel enough to maximize Davis's humiliation while maintaining Crawford's image as Hollywood's most desirable woman. What made the betrayal even more painful was how completely Tone had been won over. Davis would later admit that Tone was madly in love with Crawford, describing how he would return from their daily lunch meetings with lipstick stains covering his face, completely mesmerized by the attention from such a major star. Crawford, meanwhile, would later dismiss Davis's romantic hopes with characteristic cruelty, suggesting that while Tone thought Davis was a talented actress, he never considered her as a romantic possibility. The wedding took place immediately after Dangerous wrapped filming, adding insult to injury. Davis had to watch the man she loved marry her greatest enemy, knowing that Crawford had deliberately stolen him away, not out of genuine affection, but as an act of calculated revenge for the ex-lady incident. The Academy Awards ceremony that year became the stage for the next chapter in their war. When Davis won the Oscar for Dangerous, Tone stood up and embraced her warmly, genuinely proud of her achievement. But Crawford remained seated, her back turned to Davis in a deliberate display of contempt. Only when Tone admonished her did Crawford finally acknowledge Davis's moment of triumph, turning with a sneer to deliver what would become one of Hollywood's most famous insults about Davis's unflattering dress choice. The comment was perfectly calculated. Davis had worn a simple navy dress, actually an old costume, to slight Jack Warner, who had forced her to attend despite her opposition to the Screen Actors Guild. Crawford's remark highlighted both Davis's lack of glamour and her defiant attitude, turning what should have been Davis's greatest professional triumph into a moment of personal humiliation. The following year, Joan Crawford's move from MGM to Warner Brothers wasn't just a career change, it was a declaration of war. She was entering Bette Davis's territory, and she made sure everyone knew she intended to conquer it completely. Crawford's arrival at Warner Brothers came with unprecedented demands that revealed the depth of her strategic thinking about her rivalry with Davis. She didn't just want star treatment, she wanted the dressing room directly adjacent to Davis's. This wasn't about convenience, it was about psychological warfare. Crawford understood that proximity would allow her to torment Davis daily while maintaining the pretense of professional courtesy. Davis had been at Warner Brothers for 6 years by the time Crawford arrived. She had established herself as the studio's premier dramatic actress, fighting tooth and nail for better roles and more respect. Warner Brothers was her domain, the place where she had transformed from an unknown into a force to be reckoned with. Crawford's invasion felt like a violation of sacred ground.
I'd wanted to work with her since we were at Warner Brothers together, and I wanted to do Ethan Frome with her. I thought we would be great in it with.
The peace offensive began immediately. Crawford sent a stream of flowers and gifts to Davis's dressing room, each delivery a calculated attempt to win over her rival, or at least create the appearance of friendship for the press. But Davis saw through the strategy immediately. She returned every gift, every bouquet, every attempt at reconciliation. Her rejection wasn't just personal, it was ideological. Davis believed Crawford represented everything corrupt about Hollywood's star system. Behind the scenes, Davis made her contempt clear with cutting remarks about Crawford's lesbian overtures. This wasn't just homophobia, it was Davis's way of suggesting that Crawford was so desperate for her approval that she would try any method of seduction. The implication was that Crawford, having failed to intimidate or outperform Davis professionally, was now resorting to manipulation. The rivalry intensified when Crawford began landing roles that Davis coveted or had rejected. In 1945, Crawford won her only Academy Award for Mildred Pierce, a role that had originally been offered to Davis. The victory was particularly galling because it proved that Crawford could succeed in the kind of serious dramatic role that Davis considered her specialty. Crawford wasn't just a glamour queen anymore. She was a legitimate Oscar-winning actress, and that threatened the foundation of Davis's superiority complex. But the most devastating blow came in the form of systematic career sabotage that played out over years. Crawford used her connections and influence to gradually poison Hollywood executives against Davis, spreading rumors about her being difficult to work with, unreliable, and past her prime. The whisper campaign was so subtle and persistent that Davis often couldn't identify the source of her career troubles. Industry insiders began to notice a pattern. Whenever Davis was up for a significant role or award, Crawford would somehow insert herself into the conversation. She would lunch with producers, attend the right parties, make herself available for projects at exactly the moments when Davis was hoping to secure them. It was influence peddling disguised as professional networking. The psychological toll on Davis was enormous. She began to see Crawford's hand in every career setback, every rejection, every slight. Whether Crawford was actually responsible for all of Davis's professional troubles became less important than Davis's absolute certainty that her rival was actively working to destroy her. The paranoia fed the hatred, which in turn justified more extreme acts of retaliation. Davis's response was characteristically direct and brutal. She began giving interviews where she would savage Crawford's acting ability, her personal life, and her character. Her most quoted insult suggested that Crawford had intimate relationships with every major male star at MGM, except the studio's famous dog. But these public attacks only made Davis look petty and bitter, while allowing Crawford to maintain her dignified, professional image. The studio executives at Warner Brothers watched this drama unfold with a mixture of amusement and calculation. They recognized that the tension between their two biggest female stars could be profitable if properly managed. The rivalry generated publicity, kept both actresses motivated to outperform each other, and provided endless material for gossip columnists who helped promote their films. Jack Warner, the head of Warner Brothers, had his own reasons for encouraging the feud. He harbored a personal grudge against Davis, who had sued to get out of her contract in the late 1930s and had consistently challenged his authority. Pitting Crawford against Davis was a way to keep both women focused on each other rather than on demanding better treatment from the studio. By the end of the 1940s, both actresses were facing the reality that their best years were behind them. Hollywood was changing, younger stars were emerging, and the roles for middle-aged women were becoming scarce. But instead of finding common ground in their shared struggle, Davis and Crawford only intensified their rivalry, each convinced that the other was the primary obstacle to her continued success. By 1962, both Bette Davis and Joan Crawford were desperate. At 54 and 55 respectively, they had been relegated to Hollywood's scrap heap, dismissed as relics from a bygone era. Davis had resorted to placing a want ad in Variety magazine, describing herself as a mobile and affable actress with 30 years of experience who wanted steady employment in Hollywood. It was Crawford who found their salvation and their final battleground in a twisted Gothic novel called Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? The story of two aging sisters, former child stars turned recluses, locked in a cycle of psychological torture, seemed like the perfect vehicle for both women to showcase their talents while working out their real-life animosity on camera.
Oh, Jane, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ring for my breakfast. I was just wondering who all those people were at the back door. What?
Getting the film financed proved nearly impossible. Studio executives dismissed the project with brutal honesty, referring to the aging actresses in derogatory terms and questioning who would want to see them on screen. The ageism was unapologetic, but it also revealed how completely both actresses had fallen from their former positions of power. Robert Aldrich, the director, finally secured a minimal budget that would allow just 1 week of rehearsal and 3 weeks